Welcome to the Missouri Arts Integration Network session for February 22nd, 2021. We'd love to have you add your school name, district, organization into the chat and your email address if you would like. And a couple of brief announcements. If you need a continuing education certificate, those are available. Just email me or put your request in the chat and I will make a certificate with your name and today's date. And the highlights I'd like to call to your attention that are on that handout that I placed in the chat are some legislative action items that we would welcome anyone who is passionate about support for public education to take some action. The second is the Arts Our Education Initiative, which is a locally oriented grassroots, super easy way of generating positive momentum and support locally for the arts in your neck of the woods. Two signature events next on this list, the Show Me Arts Summit and the Fine Arts Education Day. They go hand in hand. One is designed to train the next generation of arts advocates, and our next session is March the 11th. And then we have Fine Arts Education Day. We are doing it virtually this year, and we are collecting video footage between now and March the 1st. And it can be anything as simple as recording a collection of student work that you would like to showcase and highlight, or it can be video footage, even 30 seconds of what's happening in your classroom. It can be artist statements for visual arts folks. A student to share a piece of art and then video their artist statements. So we're welcoming all that stuff. And we're lucky on the call today is Jeff Sandquist, who is the chair of our Fine Arts Education Day, in addition to the chair of MAAE. And you can email him that footage or links to that footage, and then he'll help you get it part of our showcase work. Finally, we want to make sure you are aware we have another leadership group here in the Missouri Alliance for Arts Education, another professional learning community in MAAE called the FAME Leadership Group. And it's like this one, except for it is particularly for arts educators, not necessarily only arts integration practitioners, but any arts educator at all. And we are still, I'm loving to talk about the data-driven design, because the reason Stephanie and Elizabeth are our guests today is because they are participating in that program, that we are seeking ways to show evidence of the incredible power of arts integration in action that can positively impact student learning. So if you want to know anything else about MAAE's work in any of these areas, please or anything else that's listed on the handout, feel free to reach out to me, or we can talk about it at another time. So I haven't looked to see if we have representatives from our 3 arts integration hubs on the call today, but we have 3 areas of our state where there is professional development planned, particularly for arts integration. And one of them is in St. Louis at COCA. The other is the Kansas-Missouri Partnership, and they have a free workshop coming up on March the 9th featuring Harlan Brownlee. And then Springfield, Missouri has their Summer Institute scheduled for July 29-30. Is there anyone in those groups that wants to speak up about these today that's on the call? I can't see the whole gallery. Let me look. I don't know if, looking. Welcome, everybody. I'm seeing beautiful faces. It's awesome. So I don't see any of those folks on the call, but those dates are there. And I will put a link in the chat in just a moment to the registration and more information about Harlan Brownlee's free PD for arts integration that is happening on March the 9th. So that brings us to, she said, that brings us to the overview of what we'll do and cover today. And we've just finished our introduction. And the next thing that typically happens is we have a short breakout session and a little bit of debriefing. And I posed this question to Stephanie and Elizabeth in conversation, but I didn't remind either one of them about it. Is there a question you'd like them to reflect on as they are going to breakouts and introducing themselves and kind of reflecting on? Is there anything?
There is. Okay, so this is the question that we ask our students. I frankly, because we had 2 weeks of snow, I just asked them this question just today. And Liz, you asked them in January, is that correct?
Yes, immediately.
Okay, so you want to take it away and talk a little more about it?
So, in getting them ready to explore the world and explore culture, their own culture, and culture outside of their own culture, the question is, if you could go anywhere in the world for free, where would it be and why? So that they don't pick Antarctica, they need to be obliged to learn about the history and the people who live there. So that's the string attached. Wherever you're going to get to know the people who live there. And so then we just see what happens. Where does the interest lie?
I'm going to open 4 breakout rooms. If you could go anywhere in the world for free, where would it be and why?
So I believe, and if I'm wrong, you can tell me, we've been doing the culture fair for 20 years.
First one was 2002, so really close.
Yeah. And this is us. And if you would like to talk to us more about stuff, these are our emails. You are more than welcome to email us at any time. We respond pretty quickly. This is actually from a culture fair many, many years ago. Look at how thin I am. Okay, moving on.
And for those who do not know, Stephanie Hasty, they both teach at Lebanon High School in Lebanon, Missouri. Stephanie is in English language arts, and Elizabeth Barker is in visual arts.
The main thing that we wanted to do when we first started doing culture fairs is guide students through the process of how art doesn't belong in a vacuum and it can be integrated into any subject, and it should be integrated into any subject. So we center this around our enduring understandings, which you can see here. And then we have essential questions, those 5 questions on the side that we ask our students throughout the course of our units.
And really when you're going into the enduring understandings, really this kind of gets back to how do we help students see outside of a bubble? I grew up in Lebanon. Stephanie grew up in an even smaller Southwest Missouri community. I think, yeah, I think getting out and traveling internationally was just a monumentally life-changing experience. And when that happened to me in college, it sort of set the stage for, I want to do that in my classroom. So how do we do this in the classroom? And the culture fair is one answer to that.
And notice that our EQs cover art standards as well as English standards.
I think you can click on that.
Click on it?
Yeah.
So we've been working with Phyllis and Tom Tobias to create all of these beautiful documents you are seeing, and we appreciate their feedback and their help immensely. They're wonderful human beings. And one of the things that we had not done until this year is create a crosswalk of standards connecting the English standards to the art standards that we use in our units and in the culture fair. And so this is, Phyllis, did they get a copy of this presentation, or can I put a copy in the?
You can do whatever you want. I didn't want to assume to share, but yeah.
I will do that. So you have all of the things that, all the links and all the things and all the pretties that you could want. But we had fun just figuring out, like, the stuff that we've been doing actually does connect and does do these wonderful, beautiful things. And I don't know how to get back.
I think, Stephanie, if you click on the little yellow where it says Bringing the World to Lebanon, it'll jump back over to that tab.
Oh, I see it. It's behind my, you are sharing a screen. Go away.
And this can be done with social studies standards as well, easily. We just limited this presentation to ELA and visual art.
Yes, I noticed that social studies runs throughout this as well.
It really does, and it's wonderful. These are pictures we've taken throughout the years of our culture fairs pre-COVID times. Notice all the touching and the togetherness, and we're going to be really missing that this year.
There's a video link on the journey part. It's a couple minutes long, and that's just students talking about why we need to do this. And actually, quite a few of them are exchange students.
Want me to click it?
Sure, if we have a minute or so, just to put
Okay.
some of it in student voices.
We'll see how the sound is.
We
Sometimes you have to click a button before you share to get the
have to
sound.
back up a little.
Asian people or Arabs and Muslims in general.
Then when you're here beside me, oh, take me there, take me there. Looking for a place to call my own.
I think it's about the knowledge. You're gonna be a better person, you're gonna respect everything, and I think it's really important for life.
There's nothing in the world like a kind-hearted, beautiful girl. You can search all your life.
Because it's the world around us. Gives me a wider perspective of the world.
Oh, take me there, take me there. Looking for a place to call my own. Looking for a place where I said, take me there.
Forward to a chance to see the world as a whole. People who visit can see keynote speakers, poetry, artists, dancers. It's a chance to see something that you might not get to see in your everyday life in Lebanon.
2018 Lebanon Culture Fair.
I want to go.
Right. Let's see.
So some of that was showing students working on projects in the run up to the fair itself. And then some of the pictures are actually from the fair. It really is something that takes several months of preparation, just as students are making things. Some of the things that they're making are really large. They're painting in the hallway. There's stuff everywhere. Pre-COVID times, everything is different this year. So that's
Right.
what it looked like in the past. We are navigating a new world this year.
So we've broken down like what we're doing into a couple of questions. So the first question is the why. So what are we doing? We're hosting a culture fair that encompasses student voices. And in our ELA classroom, they're creating works that help students identify their own cultures as part of the fair.
So this has to do with how you navigate, I guess, selling this to your school, because really this became a school-wide event. The last two that we had, everyone had to stop what they were doing and plan their day around the culture fair. That's a lot harder to do this year, but everything that we're doing is made available to the whole school and to the wider community because it's virtual.
And so then why do we do it? Students to see ourselves and others, to embrace similarities and differences. And in our ELA classroom, it's to write and talk about where we are from, to see where we are going. Because I'd probably say that while they make a piece of art that does get presented at the culture fair, they definitely write a lot.
And they're writing in art class too because of the research component. One of the things that we're tackling this year in visual arts is avoiding cultural appropriation, which really we relied on heavily in the past, but and that's just like making replicas of things from other cultures and then saying, well, this is okay because we're appreciating it. But it's possible to do harm even doing that and not really go at a deeper level. So this year we're focusing on making a cultural connection piece instead, where the students are studying another culture, but they're going to have to make something that represents their own culture and their own story. And in their artist statement, they're going to have to explain that connection that they made to the other culture.
And in the ELA classroom, they're creating, like you might have seen in Brazil, these cordels that hang and I advertise certain aspects of like booths and things. They're making a cordel of themselves. So the unit that I have is called Race, Place, and Identity in Missouri. And so we talk about who we are, we talk about where we're coming from, and then they create this piece of art. And then it becomes a gallery walk where they're learning about each other and about themselves through art. So how do we connect it to everything? So what now what? What are we doing with it? We have, again, thanks to Phyllis and Tom, we're still growing and creating and filling in these gaps where we are cross-pollinating and connecting our standards together and making sure we have some sort of assessment that shows what it is the kids have learned and how it is that they're learning it. And then every year we always have to tackle something concerning, maybe one year it was parents didn't like that we had invited the Baptist church. Another year it was parents didn't like that we had a booth about gay, lesbian, transgendered youth. So there's always something that we are broadening the horizon of Lebanon through our culture fair.
Well, and a lot of that comes from just students telling their own stories and, you know, being fully who they are. Working with the pushback, we always have to go back to what do we need to be doing that supports students. There was a link back on that other slide to the virtual culture fair. We're in a hybrid model now. And so we're structuring this around the hybrid model. We do not come to school on Friday. It's a virtual day. And so that's a good day to have Zoom call with our guests. And so in the past, we structure culture fairs so that we can bring people who are geographically not that far away, who, you know, have something to share. So this is where knowing somebody like Richie Myers and Rolla comes in handy, because he's in contact with a lot of international students on that campus. But for a virtual culture fair, it's a Zoom call. So if we need to Zoom with my former student in Dhaka, Bangladesh, it's not a problem, other than the fact that he's staying up until 11 o'clock at night to talk to us in the morning. And so the students have been given a sketchbook, and what they're asked to do is either they come to the Zoom call live or there's a recording of it, and they have to give a response in their sketchbook. The response can be taking notes and journaling. The response can be sketching and making it visual. And for some of them, it's both. And so it's really interesting to see some of the pieces that come out of it. Obviously, there are different abilities in terms of where kids are with drawing ability or writing ability, but they're still showing that they're processing what they're learning. And the lady in the capture from the Zoom call, that is Karen Griffin. She is an artist and a storyteller from Kansas City. She's amazing.
And their art, like, this is new to us, and so the things that they're producing are just amazing.
This is from Today's Treats. This is a box of Saudi Arabian date cookies called ma'moul. And so the kids get to sample these, and then I get to, explain what the writing is on the box and where that comes from. And we've had mixed reviews. I think they're delicious. A lot of the students think they're too weird, but we ask them to be like Shakira and try everything as long as it's safe.
And that is our little presentation. Notice when I get you the link, which I will do in just a second, that we have given you access to all of our things. So our scoring guides, our assessments, our academic vocabulary, our programs that we've used, the art that we're doing, all of the things. Please take our stuff and use it however it would look in your classrooms.
Yeah, the Culture Fair project has a whole bunch of links on it too that are good conversation starters.
I am so grateful to both of you for sharing all that with us today and giving us lots to think about. I'm going to invite anyone who has questions for them to either unmute, raise your hand. We're a fairly small group, so I don't think we have to be super formal about a process. Unless everybody starts talking at once, and then maybe we will have to formalize. But as I listened to you, I was curious about something that I've noticed in MAAE's work in racism, inclusion, diversity, and equity challenges is that many times students who identify as white think they don't have a culture. And I would love to hear you, if you can, reflect on that, because correct me in terms of your demographics, are the majority of the students at your high school are majority white?
Very white.
Okay, I thought so.
96%
Mhm.
white, evangelical, Protestant.
And we also have over 50% free and reduced lunch.
So since lots of white folks don't even perceive culture that way, how have you helped students come to an understanding, or is this the whole process designed to help them come to that understanding?
I've had students start down the path of they're starting to do a research project based on the prompt, and they are not engaged in it, and then I catch what they're talking about instead of doing their work. And we've had culture fair projects about the rodeo, and when the kids were doing a culture fair project about the rodeo, we connected them with a former LHS student who works in the rodeo in Monterrey, Mexico. And so they're making those cross-cultural connections. So they're exploring their culture, and the rodeo is very much part of it, but they're also learning about how rodeo came from places like Monterrey, Mexico. I've had culture fair projects about NASCAR and the culture that comes out of that. And so as the students are seeing their peers' projects, they're starting to get an idea that culture is all encompassing. And so those things that they're excited about, and they spend their, they live for that. They go out there on the weekend. They were all manifestations of culture. I had a student who attended, I'm trying to remember exactly which Christian denomination it is. It's a branch of the Pentecostal church, but they do not cut their hair. And so she did her culture fair project about her church, and she actually made an entire display of what you can do with long hairstyles. She always came in and her hair was just fantastically arranged every day. And so that became the foundation for her project. I mean, so there are ways that the students start to see their own culture as they explore these questions.
And with the unit that I do with my ELA students, we are listening to like This I Believe podcast, This American Life podcast. We are talking about different cultures in St. Louis, Kansas City, Columbia, and we are then reflecting on what our culture looks like in Lebanon. And it's really cool. Every year I've done this, how they recognize that small town life isn't much different than city life, because within cities there are cultures, there are units, there are concepts, right? And they use those things to again focus on race, place, and their identity in Missouri.
And Phyllis is showing the herd of deer outside of her window, and we've had students that have done culture fair projects that have to do with the culture of hunting that is here. There was a year where we connected our classroom with a middle school art classroom that was, I think, Berkeley Middle School near Ferguson. And I asked students to find a way to share their culture with students there. So one of my students went out in his tree stand and recorded a video talking about how hunting makes him feel peaceful, how it makes him connect with nature. And it was really sweet. And unfortunately, he died in a car wreck last year. And when Kababi Bayok came to do the mural in our school, he had this figure meditating, and the kids were finding ways to put their own culture and their own identity in the mural, and the kids were bringing up camouflage, and it just so happened that he put the camouflage on the meditating figure, and then the connection was made with the boy who had made the video of himself up in his tree stand. That was his way of finding his peace.
And that's how it works in our classrooms as well, is that we let our kids explore on their own. We don't direct them. Do you know what I'm saying? We let them do the movement, do the talking, do the writing, do the art, and make the connections. And then we take those connections and help them blossom them.
And that's how I got lassoed at one of these events one year.
How I ate a cricket.
Oh,
I
wow.
didn't like it. I didn't like it at all.
They ran out of cricket. I didn't get that experience, Stephanie. I'm so sorry.
You ate a cricket. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions from folks who are gathered here today? If not, I have another one, but I want to give somebody else a chance to talk if they want to talk. Tom Tobias is raising his hand.
I'm going to play devil's advocate here because Phyllis and I were both involved in kind of like helping you guys kind of like find your direction. Not that you didn't have a direction, but maybe just kind of like putting it into solidified kind of words that we can all agree on and make use of. So my question is, you have those enduring understandings. How do you teach those enduring understandings? Is that something that can be done, or is it just like a bunch of things all thrown together and eventually hopefully you get the kids to arrive at that understanding? That's my question.
For me in my classrooms, it's writing about them. So like today I just introduced the unit today. So I open up the anticipation guide. They decided on their own where they are with the enduring understandings, like with a thumbs up, thumbs down, star or whatnot. And then I had them journal in their paper notebooks about why they thought what they thought. And this is the first day. So as it progresses, we go back to our paper notebooks and we look at what we've done, we add to it. Maybe we add something somebody has said in class when we talk out loud about these things. And all of this is going on while they are creating their projects. And so they may have one idea, like one girl, I signed it today and she already came up to me and she said, here's my idea, does it work? What I think is great is when a kid says, here's my idea, does it work? I say, well, what do you think? Let's look at the qualifications. Let's look at this stuff. What do you think? And why do you think that this is you? How do you identify yourself? And so she starts talking to me about these things and this tattoo her and her mom are going to get when she turns 18 and all this other stuff. And I was like, I want to see that on this piece of art as well. I want to see that. She was like, you want to see my mom? I'm like, it sounds like it's part of this whole entire big event. How you identify yourself, who you are. I want to see it on this thing, And so tying it back to those enduring understandings through the anticipation guide that then gets checked throughout the unit. For me, that's how it works.
I was just going to say that it's really the writing piece for me as well. Although some of my students, they're much better at communicating through the visual art that they make. But this year I'm using the anticipation guide that Stephanie created. And that's going to lead into just basically polling them several times to see where they're at with those understandings. And as in the past, we invite them to write about it when all of it's over. And that's where we get a lot of feedback about what they're picking up from it along the way.
Jenny Fahnenstiel is raising her hand. Please unmute, Jenny.
Okay, so I'm curious. I know that you have them write a lot along the way, which is wonderful. And in that writing, I'm sure come reflections that they look within themselves and see themselves with new eyes. And I was wondering if at the end, if you have that encounters with them where they saw something, a newness that surprised them, if any of them experienced that, and then how, once they experience that, what their commitment is to take that step into the world with that awareness, if that happens.
I had a student start writing poetry. Like he was literally an FFA, wears overalls, farm dude. And we were working on stuff. And he said, I like to be in the fields when the dandelions pop, the pop of the dandelion. And I was like, what? What are you talking about? And so he starts talking to me about dandelions and how they pop, you know, and do these things. And he's wrote it down, and I was like, this is poetry. This is beautiful. And let's see, that was probably 10 years ago. And I had him in class twice, and he was a poet after that, you know. That's all
Oh,
he
that's
did.
wonderful.
It was beautiful.
I
wonderful.
think it comes out in the relationships that the students develop with others, others outside of their cultural experience, outside of their community, and how those relationships continue after
Mhm.
this experience. I think it comes out in experiences like you normally don't see a bunch of people walking through the hallways and spaces of Lebanon High School that are visibly Muslim, wearing Muslim headscarves. And so there was an incident during one of the culture fairs where, and I mean, we hear about these things afterwards, where some students had called some of our guests terrorists or ISIS or something like that. We didn't have to do anything about it because our students took care of it. They made sure that the people who did that were held accountable and educated, and our guests were well treated the entire time. And so I think it comes out in experiences like that where clearly the students are demonstrated that their horizons have been broadened and they are seeing themselves in other people that may have a lot of cultural differences.
That's wonderful. You know, that deserves an article to be written about growth and change. Not that you need one more thing to do, but
It's good stuff. Put some of it out there. There was, building off of that, some of our guests had gone home to Kansas City, and just like in a week or so after that culture fair, the mosque had been vandalized. And so a group of those same students like got together and they made artwork. They were showing our school mascot cleaning that because they just wanted the people there that they now thought of as friends to know that, hey, we're thinking about you and we care about you, and you know, we don't want to see this happen to people we care about.
That's wonderful. Boy, we need more teachers like you all over the world, all over the United States. That's wonderful.
Thank you. It's really kind.
I was going to, we are down to our less than 10 minutes left, and I really want to let other voices be heard besides mine. If there is anyone who has anything else to add or ask. Okay.
I do have one more observation, but that's because I was in on this on the ground floor. But I just like to draw attention to the students disciplining themselves and kind of like self-policing other students' behavior, and then the young man who transformed into a poet. I think those are things. I think those are things that if you start off with the initial understandings, that enduring understandings, the students themselves have created new understandings for themselves that can go ahead and be shared with others. And so I'd like to encourage you to always kind of like be on the outlook for understandings that come out of your initial understandings and maybe document those.
Okay. Thank you.
I appreciate the feedback.
And what I was going to say earlier was about just the power of writing and the power of reflection that allow for that growth. It's really, really awesome. My question was in regard to administrative support. When there was pushback response to the Baptist involvement in some way, I was curious about the administrative response to that parental pushback, and if there is anything that you can share with us that you've done over time that has developed a supportive administrative environment. To have at the high school level for the admin to say, we're shutting everything down and everybody's doing this is pretty significant, because there are lots of things where like, okay, you guys are great, go do your thing, but we're running the real school over here. So I would love for you to share any of your story about administrative support that might inform us or inspire us in some way. Or
Well, part of it is that the culture outside of Lebanon has changed. I've been teaching for 22 years, And the culture that we had when we started doing we used to call it the diversity fair, which that was probably one of the changes. We just changed the title of it and kept on doing it because diversity really offended people. But culture does not offend people. We don't know why, whatever. The culture outside of Lebanon has changed, and Lebanon has had to change with that culture as we get kids who are transgender, as we get more diverse populations. Like I can remember when I first started teaching, I could count on one hand the amount of children who looked like me. I can't do that anymore. You know what I'm saying? Which is nice. I mean, that means there's 25 of them, but that's still, way more than what we had before, which is refreshing. And let's see what else you're talking about. Oh, the reason why they didn't like the Baptist church is because the Baptist church was passing out pamphlets to the children. And so we made a rule as well. You can pass out candy and you can pass out erasers that have crosses on them. You may not pass out pamphlets that talk to them about burning in hell. No, but so let's not do that.
We have the First Amendment guide. Like there's the First Amendment Center, and we have a document that every culture fair guest receives. Mostly it's targeted at any guest that that's coming there to represent religion, because it's perfectly fine to study religion in public school. It's not fine to proselytize religion in public school. And we have a lot of people who work for schools that have trouble with this. And so we have to make sure that that's understood. And also there's a difference between a student making a project that's expressing their religious belief and then what a teacher does in the official capacity as a teacher paid for by tax dollars. And so we have to have some conversations around the Establishment Clause. I don't know if I'm going to try to summarize this really quickly. There were some issues with administrative pushback from staff members a couple of years ago because of some DEI training that the school was having. And the DEI training answered staff questions about how do you navigate students and things like this. And we have some staff members that don't do very well with that, and they pushed back hard. And ultimately what happened is we started collecting testimonies. We've been sitting here in this corner of the world for a long time now. And that means that we were able to collect testimonies that started from kids who went to the school in the late 1980s all the way to 2019. And we created two documents. One had to do with specifically LGBTQ students, and the other one had to do with other marginalized groups of students. And we collected, I think there were like 50 different testimonies. It was almost a longitudinal study. And those documents were released to administration, to counseling, to the professional development committee. And then very unfortunately, about a month later, one of our former students who identified as LGBT was found dead of suicide. And at that point, the documents were allowed to be released to the whole staff and to the school board and to everybody at central office and to a good portion of the staff over at the middle school. And that's what laid the foundation for having a diversity, equity, inclusion advisory council. And Stephanie is an officer in that group, so she can talk more.
As our administrator said, we were like, can we have a DEI advisory council? He goes, I really can't say no to that, can I? And I said, you really can. It would look ugly. And so we have a council now, and we do book studies. We did a Brene Brown workshop last year. So it's building up ourselves and then building up our community so we can then build up the other teachers in our community. Because I think some of them push back because of fear. Some of them push back because of misunderstanding, because whatever their background is, religion.
They feel like they lose some of themselves by recognizing somebody who is different from them. They feel like they have to, they can't allowing those students to be called by the pronoun.
Andrew Back is on that committee, and he was saying some things that honestly, when you start saying those things out loud in front of people, they don't sound kind and they don't sound inclusion and they don't sound any of those kinds of things, which then had our administrator defending the advisory council that he doesn't have to join if he doesn't want to, you know. But if it was particularly about, we decorate our doors for Christmas, which I hate, but it's a tradition that doesn't seem to stop. And one of the doors had a black Santa with a gold tooth and a chain. And a student who was black was like, we don't like that. It's offensive. And all the teachers, that particular teacher and some other people were like, we don't understand why that's offensive, if the other kid was laughing. And I said, I go, as a person who went to a mostly white high school, I can tell you sometimes I laugh because I'm so embarrassed, I can only laugh, right? And they're like, what? I go, yeah, so it doesn't mean that they liked it. It could just mean that they were embarrassed and didn't know what to do besides laughing. So we had a very, very big conversation about that. And then the teacher blew up, well, can't kids do anything nowadays? And I said, sure they can, but black gold tooth Santas probably aren't one of them. Just going to throw that out there, you know, kind of thing.
Wow.
So our DEI council likes to make everyone more aware.
Yes.
So I hope that helps. I mean, it's definitely like to be able to do things with the culture fair now it is easier because instead of just a couple people working together on initiatives like this, we now have the support of more than a dozen other faculty members and administrators
and community members
too. Absolutely.
So our DEI council, starting this year, we started it last year when it was just teachers and administrators. This year we now have three community members and 2 student members, and we're hoping just to keep on growing until our council looks like the school we represent. And we read things like stamps and things like that. So
I'm just going to make one observation, and it's based on not only what you just said today. You know, this is 20 years in the making that you are developing admin support. There have been a variety of things that have happened, but also drawing faculty to the cause and members of the community. And one of the things that beginning arts integration practitioners find is sometimes they want it to go faster than it is. And then they see a well-established program like this and wonder, how did you get there? And just underscoring, it does take time. It takes time to hone skills and focus and find, and then build a coalition in support. So I just want to say thank you again, ladies, for being here. And I'm going to look forward
to
the report in April to hear how it all worked out this year, even in the midst of hopefully what is the final chapter of a pandemic. And I'm going to place in the chat really quick a link to how you can register for next month's Zoom session. And it is featuring one of the people here today, Jenny Fonenstiel. She's in the pink in the middle of my squares. So I hope you will join us for next month's professional learning community, the main event here, featuring Jenny, who teaches in Columbia, Missouri at Locust Street Expressive Arts Elementary School. So we'll be going from high school to elementary again, and from the Southwest to the center of the state. And I'm just so grateful always for everyone for getting to spend this time together. I'm going to double check and make sure I haven't forgotten anything to tell you. Yeah, next month is Jenny, and then Stephanie Elizabeth will be back the following month. And is that it? Am I at the end of my thing? Oh, there's my thank you. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Please make sure I get your name if you need a certificate for continuing ed. My email address is there, but I'll also put it in the chat if you'd like, director@moaae.org. We want this to be a benefit to you. I'm always open to new ideas and new people who want to share. And finally, we welcome contributions to MAAE. We are a 501c3, and your tax-deductible contribution is always welcome. And I put this in here, but you guys can't get to it. I'm going to stick this in the chat too. Anything else before we call it a day? Okay, well, everybody have a great rest of your week. I hope to see you next month. Thanks for coming today.
And thank you, ladies. You did a great
Bye,
job.
everybody.
Thank you.